Hi, I'm Corey, and I'm here with James McGuire on voice chat. And we are going to basically show you some different ways to build orcs. We've got the new book out, Orcs, Conquerors of Elves and Men. There's so much in that book. We thought it might be cool to show some starting builds. How you doing today, James?
Good, Corey. I'm excited to be a part of this. I've had a lot of fun recently playing the Orcs, and so the people that I play with regularly, both online and in person.
James is one of my star troubleshooters. So we've come up with 8 basic builds. And just as a refresher, you always have to have a warlord in your starting build. And you can spend no more than 72 gold on 6 or more warriors. And all the builds we're showing are 6 warrior starts. Things like a mage are optional. We're going to see that we've got 4 sets with that feature a mage and four that don't. And so I'm going to jump in and talk about kind of the one instinctive build that James and I both started with. This first one here starts with a warlord, and then it's going to start with a shaman or a fire magus. Either one you get to choose, and once you read the book, you'll see the advantage of each. And then you get a reaver, who the reavers are greatly improved from last version, and you could get a scourge. And a quartermaster is kind of an essential warrior to your war clan. It's hard to imagine you'd want a halfling, but the Wanderer Quartermaster has the new haggle skill, and it is one not to miss, because you can basically buy equipment for 1 gold piece less, which is going to make a huge difference even in your starting war clan. And then we both started with a freebooter when we did this build. If you watch some of the earlier videos on this, you almost always want to start with a stone horse, a horse bow, and a saddle for your freebooter. And so this build is going to give you an extra 4 gold to put towards all those expenses, and you're still going to be able to have some weapons and maybe even some armor on some of the other guys when you build. And what I really like about this build is it's going to start you over 100 in value, because you've got that person haggling and getting equipment for cheaper. Plus, all orcs start with a free short sword. You're going to start at maybe 110, 112, 115. It gives you a lot of variety. You get to try one of everything. And if you're like me, you're going to fall in love with each one of the characters for a different reason. So, James, tell me about some of the other builds you've done.
The starter build that I went with, this fourth build down here, where you start with a spellcaster. I really wanted to try the new Fire Magus. They get a bunch of awesome, unique spells. The downside being that they don't get access to any of the other schools of magic, which I think is perfectly acceptable. Starting with a quartermaster, I feel like it's almost more necessary than a mage. In some ways, the having a quartermaster helps you buy a mage if you choose not to start with one later. I wanted to start with both because I wanted to try it out. And I was just really intrigued by the Harbinger. There was a Harbinger in the old version of the Orcs, and it was the cheapest warrior that you could buy. They had worse stats than everybody else. But the new Harbinger, being a human assassin that starts with a Yavinar Nightmare, that was too crazy. That was too cool for me to not give it a try in this initial build. I ended up taking 2 freebooters because that's the only way that you can make it work. And at first it was a struggle kind of figuring it out. And, one of the things I'll touch on is starting gear. It's hard to know whether or not it's right to start with a horse and a saddle or a horsebow, because you can't always do both, especially when you have more freebooters. So on my initial build, I started with a horsebow with a thumb guard for both of my freebooters, and I decided I'll get them horses later.
Not a bad play because you start off being able to fight, just not as well.
I've tried on a couple of other builds where I've started with horses instead of the bows. You know, having a quartermaster means that the weapons and stuff are cheaper, so you can buy the horse and the saddle, and then buy a couple weapons for your other guys. And they have a short sword, which isn't great, but you know, all the orcs are at least a strength of 3, so you're stronger than half of the other human warriors, right? It is a little bit cheaper in the long run when you're buying a horse bow and whatnot later versus buying the stone horses. Add to that freebooters start with -6 shadow unless you start them with a horse. You really want them to be able to level up quickly, and if you don't start them with a horse, you'll struggle.
Yep, and I've found that sometimes that first level skill kind of determines the course for your freebooters too. So, you know, if you roll a singles, you're probably going to take keen aim or something that's going to help you with the bow. But if you roll a doubles, now you start thinking about, do I want a bloodsmith? Do I want this? Do I want that? You know, it really...
Yeah, of course.
It kind of shapes where you go. Option 2, we're just going to touch on lightly. That's starting with an ogre. And I definitely have tried that one. And I found that for the extra 7 gold, the ogre's really not that much better than a reaver. And maybe in some ways worse. I like ogre as a late add-on rather than an initial build. The boulder rules have really improved, so if you like throwing boulders and hitting multiple people at once, you might try an ogre once or twice, but I like build 3 with the 2 reavers way better. Now that one has no quartermaster, so you're giving up that ability to buy things for cheap right off the bat. I would recommend, if you go with that build, one of your guys should probably get haggle as soon as they can. I would not put it off. But don't like either of those builds as well as 1 and 4. And then James, do you want to tell us about the build 7 there, that bloodletter?
Yeah. One of the things that I instinctively looked at was, oh hey, there's a giant that I can start with that isn't a paragon. I might as well give it a try just to see, right? So the way that I went with this build is, you know, obviously you have to do 4 freebooters, but I started with 2 stone horses and saddles for them, which was most of the gold that I had left over. You know, you've only got about 28 gold, so I believe that would be all the gold you have access to. And I just, you know, everyone had a short sword, and so the bloodletter got a short sword from one of the other guys, bullied him into it, right? Oh my gosh, is the bloodletter a killer? Starting with tireless with a speed of 7 is absolutely insane.
You certainly don't need missiles, although you can throw boulders even better than an ogre.
Yep. Yeah. You know, you have a higher agility than an ogre. We started with 3, which, you know, is, look, I'm not going to complain about 7 damage on a boulder.
Yeah.
That's for sure. The thing that I felt the more that I played the war plan, though, was that it was kind of a mistake to get a bloodletter so early, and I think I attribute that to starting with too many freebooters. You know, you max out on freebooters right away. You have 4 guys that are starting with -6 shadow that really aren't really good until you've spent what
15, 25, 26 gold on each one.
Right, yeah. So you're, you know, until you've spent 100 gold on your 4 freebooters, the ones that don't have the pieces are going to be almost useless in a fight. You have to get them the horses first so that they can level up, because if they don't level, they won't deal damage. So buying the bow first is only kind of a good idea, but the bow without the horse, you're at 2 agility, which means you're not more agile than anybody. So you're making a bunch of 1 dice shots, which never really feels good. You can't not take 1 dice shots because you're worried about rolling an oops. That's what the thumb guard's for, right, Cory?
Oh yeah, that's it. The interesting
Yeah.
counterpoint to that is I have a buddy who loves superhero clans. He just gives one guy everything and the other 5 stand around and watch. He put everything into his bloodletter. Like he bought scrap armor so he'd be a 10 defense out of the box. Because they're unfettered, so they don't get slowed down by the heavy armor. He got them the best weapons, and just played bloodletter games. What he found out is he does need a bow or something because the bloodletter is a feaster, and so he needs to have a way to stop him from eating, and it's better to shoot him from a distance.
What I ended up seeing on one of my buddies introduced me to the unarmed bloodletter build, where he gave them the scrap armor, sure, and he took brawler, he took grapple, he took longer reach. Absolutely horrifying when this creature charges 7 paces towards you. You think that you're safe because you're like a pace or 2 away, and he's like, I have longer reach, and he grapples you, and you just get yanked towards him, and now you're suddenly on the ground with this giant that's going to, rip you apart unless you do something.
And then eat you.
And it's like, my early experience was my friend needed to have 4 other people assist his one warrior to be equal strength.
Yeah. It is a devastating choice, but it has some trade-offs.
Absolutely. Being able to deal with the feast is difficult. You actually hope that they've got Oni fetishes so that you won't feast on them. It made my day when I played this against my friend who likes buying Oni fetishes, and I was like, oh, you're saying that my bloodletter gets to keep murdering your friends? Okay. That's excellent.
You will note here in the second column, these are no spellcasters to start. And the reason that we think these builds are good is the Orc spellcaster, whether you go Shaman or Fire Magus, is the absolute cheapest of the spellcasters. 11 gold, I've seen people make that in their first game. And usually by the second game, you've got 11 gold saved up, and you can get your spellcaster right away. If there's a guy that you're going to miss out early, that's why we have this second group of builds, because this Warlord, Ogre, Reaver, Scourge build is really high on melee offense. And the second one here, the Quartermaster and the 2 Reavers, oh my god.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just offense, and you can afford to equip them, and so it's just great.
That was the direction I went for my double Reaver build. Cory went with the spellcaster. I believe you went with the Shaman specifically, right?
Yeah.
And then I went with the Quartermaster because, for me, starting with Haggle means that you can equip your Warlord, your Reavers with good weapons right off the bat. And, that first game, if you get incentives, you can buy cuirasses for the whole clan and then just sell them, because you're buying them and selling them for 1 gold. The Quartermaster kind of lets you help save gold a little bit faster because of Haggle.
And I think that's an interesting point, James. In the past on these tip videos, we've said, hey, whatever you do, don't buy the 2 gold piece armor, And
right?
this is the quartermaster allows you to buy that 2 gold piece armor and use it, get the benefit of it early, and then later on sell
Mhm.
it for what you paid for it. So
Yeah. You're not losing any gold at that point
yeah.
because your investment is 1 gold and your resale value is 1 gold. Use them until you have the money to buy the Brigandine. Brigandine's a little bit more expensive than it is for other war clans, the 3 gold, the 3 defense one, because it's 6 gold instead of 5.
The last build there is one of my new favorites, the number 8. Going to start with a warlord and a reaver, which can't live without those. Harbinger is quickly becoming my favorite warrior type. Gurges, now that they have grapple, are amazing. And then 2 freebooters, and I would try and get at least one on the horse instantly, or do James's idea of give them both horse bows to begin with and the thumb guard and all that stuff so that they're at least useful. You just know they're going to level up slowly.
Yeah.
This build only costs 71, and so you get a little bit of extra equipment here, but you're going to be saving up for that mage first. This build requires you to be real disciplined. I've learned that I can't live without haggle, so probably the first skill I'm going to take is going to be haggle. I went with a war dog right away for my scourge, and so my next single skill was a keeper, which allows you to train dogs and horses. First doubles has got to be the bloodsmith, and as you
Oh,
guys
absolutely.
read the rules, bloodsmith is such an amazing skill, and it does so much for you. Even if you're not crafting virgin items and applying blood magic to items, just the fact that you can start making. Last night I needed money, so I made 2 cuirasses and I sold them. you know
Yeah.
and that gave me enough money to do what I needed to do, so it's a great skill.
Oh, for
uh,
sure. I do think it's important to note that the builds that I think me and Corey both feel like are great, our intention is to buy the powerful characters like the Ogre or the Bloodletter later on. When you're playing adventures where you only get a couple of your guys, you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're like, I do not want this warrior to appear because they're brand new and they're awful. The Ogre and the Bloodletter are never going to feel that way. You know, if you buy an Ogre, you buy a Bloodletter, you can give them a short sword and they're still terrifying.
yep.
You know, they're gonna get their 2 attacks because they're 6 and 7 speed. They're 5 and 6 strength. So, you know, the Ogre is gonna do 4 damage right out of the gate with it. The Bloodletter is gonna do 5 with a short sword. You know, you're gonna really see the mileage when they appear on those other maps. Whereas, you know, I would be hesitant to buy a freebooter after I start. And that's, you know, why I like the builds where I only start with the 1 freebooter. Because if I'm only starting with 1 freebooter, that gives me a lot of freedom to buy the really cool guys later.
When you play some of the more advanced adventures, they tend to be co-op, and the
Yeah.
tables are set up so that your worst guys tend to appear. And so folks who like to build war clans with lots of guys are probably going to be forced to be playing a lot of bad freebooters. And so, you know, if you're adding new guys, add the guys that you really want. Add a Paragon, add a Bloodletter, add an
Yeah.
Ogre, add another Reaver. You know, whatever gets you excited.
Corey and I were talking last night. After your war clan starts, it's not worth buying a freebooter because you can buy a Royal Guard and literally get a better freebooter, you know, higher agility, more proficiencies, starts with a horse, a bow, you know, the whole 9 yards. They start with all of that. You know, they're just going to be better off to start with than a freebooter. Sure, they don't have the damage right away, but they get to start leveling immediately. They've got the step archer, so they're always more agile while riding horseback, and you get more value out of them than, just giving the gear to a freebooter.
Quality over quantity. Really
Yeah,
makes.
absolutely.
So, anything else you want to get in as we wrap up here, James?
I think everything's been just about covered. I think that there are some very obvious first skills to take on a couple of warriors, but, a lot of them, it's like there's a whole bunch of options in the orc book that there isn't really a right first skill unless you get doubles, of course, because if you get doubles, you've got to take Bloodsmith. Um, orcs don't have a ton of master skills. I believe they've got 5. And so, but Bloodsmith doesn't require any psyche feats. So it's really easy to just be like, oh, my freebooter rolled the first master skill. Cool, they're my Bloodsmith now. Because it doesn't require any other, it doesn't require any feats or anything. And that's all reflected in the skill itself and how much it costs to make stuff.
So I think that's a good place to end. And if you guys like these, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and tell us what you like, and we'll do more.
If you have a particular thought about the game, ask us and we'll do our best to answer.